All right, so I'm actually going to share a quick story with you about my own design shifts. And it was a great introduction because it's important for me to note that I believe everyone in here is a designer. So look left, look right. Come on, actually do it. You're not doing it. Everyone's a designer. Everyone picked out clothes. Maybe it was the clean ones on top. It's still a thoughtful decision. Everyone picks a car. Everyone decorates their house. You chose what you ate for lunch. You choose how you brand yourself to other individuals. Everyone's a designer. My first shift started when I was 7 years old. So my parents didn't have a lot, but I had wanted a computer for a couple years. And on Christmas morning, I actually got a computer. And yes, that's a Packard Bell PB500. Yes, that dot matrix printer is half the size of our living room. And yes, those are super cool glasses. So with that computer, I got one game. And it was by a little-known company called Sierra, created by Ken and Roberta Williams. And this is a game called King's Quest. And basically what you did is you used the 4 arrow keys, and you walked up to things. And then you typed, look at the water. And then it would wait a second, and it would say, it's your typical moat water. It's dark and murky and smelly. And that's basically how you interacted with the whole game. And then when you walked off the screen, it would say, insert disk 7 of 54, label side up. And then repeat. And what I started thinking about is there's an experience here that someday I hope to maybe make better. I thought I would go into game design. It did not work. So I made the mistake of thinking that my identity and my design was identified in these logos. So I went to Purdue for graphic design and a computer science hybrid degree. I started a web design company in the late 90s, like everybody that was alive in the late 90s. I got my PhD, and I was a professor, a tenured professor in Minnesota for the past 8 years. I started a few centers and institutes, and I created a few projects that I'll share with you. So I started thinking about what is design to me? Is it this road that keeps taking all these curves and loops back around and overpasses and underpasses? And I don't think it is. I don't think design is a path. That's just how I feel, and I'm probably wrong, but it wasn't for me. For me, I think design is an evolution of all these shifts. So we are in Fargo, we are in the north, so if there's any arborists in the audience, please excuse my creative liberty and limb stability here. This is how I feel my shifts happen. You start playing around with design. You start trying to make a little bit of money design for work, or from design for work. Then you start exploring. Once you start exploring, you move into experience. I started teaching design. I started doing research. I started working with kids. I had my own kids. That gives you a whole new look. And eventually, you find out things like communication, culture, and everyone are where you're directionally going. Cool. So I'm going to share a few of these with you. So first of all, exploration. This is the best phase of design, at least it was for me. When I went to Purdue, I learned out very quickly that I can't draw at all. But I love taking photos. I absolutely love taking photos. And I love to code. The code just made sense to me for some reason very early on, and I didn't have much of a background in it. So what my friend Brad right over here in the front row and I started doing is we made these little files. And what we were trying to do is push UI as fast as we could to see what would happen. And like a lot of early 2000s, late 90s, it was Flash files. And we made these little explorations. So we needed a place to put them. We wanted to give them out. We wanted to share what we were learning. So we started a company called Brain Giants. And this was our logo. This literally was our logo. And what we thought was really clever at the time is that we were really in sync with each other, both in design and in code. And, you know, we actually thought we were so clever that the 2 guys, 1 brain tagline was so good that we had to trademark it so no one else could use it. So that brings me to the value of failure. The true value of failure is to fail early, and someone already said this today. Fail early, fail often, and if you can, fail gracefully. Failure is the best thing in design. You should applaud failure. You shouldn't feel bad about it. So when you start valuing failure, you really start looking at, all right, it's not all the structure, it's the experience that I want to create. And this is how I learned design. Maybe many of you learned design. This is ADDIE, analyze, design, develop, implement, evaluate. And my issue with ADDIE is that design is only 20% of ADDIE. So when I started teaching design, and the way I thought about it is ADDIE, which actually doesn't sound good. Design kind of envelops everything. When you're analyzing, you're designing. When you're evaluating at the end of the process, you're designing. So I took a lot of those little Flash experiments, and I wanted to build out my own gallery of photos. And I didn't want it very static HTML files, that every time you clicked, you got a new photo, and then you waited, and then a black screen, and then you waited. And it was actually a lot of fun. And what I found out is that it wasn't as much about my photography. It was just sharing it. And when I started putting this little numbers, this is the EXIF off your camera, the data on when you captured that shot, a lot of people started contacting me saying, you know, I've actually learned a lot, not just looking at your photos, but looking at your data and looking at how you adapt to different situations. So I started finding out that design can be a teaching component. So then I worked with a religious and contemporary artist, Jeff Hine, out of Salt Lake City. And I built this really cool gallery that it was built for a 70-inch touchscreen. This is the early 2000s. These things were like $150,000. And what he wanted, he didn't want all the little placards in his gallery next to his paintings. He wanted people to go up and interact with something to learn about his paintings, and then have his painting on the entire wall. No verbiage next to it. So we built this. I don't think it ever actually got put up because of the cost, but it was a lot of fun. So yeah, as you'd scroll your fingers over the colors, they would play, and then the images would pop up. One of the greatest projects I've ever worked on, though, is my hero is Jim Brandenburg. He was my hero when I was really young. He's a National Geographic Minnesota photographer. He's famous for the wolf face photo, you know, where the wolf's staring around the tree. And I had the just incredible honor of actually staying up at his cabin in north of Ely and talking with him about his website design. And he said that, you know what, I've had my career in photography. Now I want people to just experience it. I don't care if people steal it. When people interact with my photos and they click on those images, I want full screen photos where they have a 13-inch monitor or a 30-inch monitor. They steal it, make a little postcard, great. At least they got to experience it. And I was kind of blown away by that. And this was back again in the mid-2000s when big images like that weren't as common. And what he really taught me is that the importance of content is only equal to the experience of the content. They don't really get separated. So when you start having equal signs in your design, you start doing a lot of research. So I actually started building lots of assessment environments. There we go. This was Avenue. This is an e-assessment environment built specifically for American Sign Language that very quickly adapted into a worldwide environment for any world language. It was used around the world by hundreds of thousands of students. We also built projects with National Geographic where we treated students like geographers. We didn't teach them geography. We said, you know, using this real-world data, how do you build a hospital in San Francisco? How do you solve climate change? How do you look at avian flu? A lot of fun is designing for very little kids. This was grade 1 through 6 deaf and hard of hearing kids that were learning how to read and write English. What we found out is that they would play this thing for an hour to get that little monkey and play all these little word games. When we took the monkey away, they played it like twice. So the whole kind of gamification thing actually did work, and they had a lot of fun. And lastly, my team and I at the University of Minnesota built a platform called Passport. Rather than teaching world languages, we actually bring you through the experience as a world language. You go out and you discover a language. You explore the content and the culture. You expand upon it. You fail. You share it. And at the end of the day, you stand up and you speak Spanish or German or French or Chinese. And we kind of leveraged a lot of the technology we built to put this platform out there. So when you look at research, it's very easy to fall into design by numbers. And you definitely have to respect the numbers. But you have to learn how to design with the numbers and your intuition and everything that goes along with it. So moving into communication, Brad and I built a small little platform called Flipgrid for just my class. It was a class of 12. I love hearing PhD students talk about design, fail when they're talking about design, get inspired, motivated by each other. And we built this for my class, and very quickly, other people wanted to use it. And we said no. We were coding it each week for my own class. And then we put a back end behind it, and it became Flipgrid. It went from 1 to 100 to 1,000 to 10,000. Teachers around the world, 6 continents. We're nearing 3 million videos shared by students around the world. And it's been an incredible success for us, both in education and even in enterprises. Large and small started finding it's a very simple way to collaborate and communicate that didn't have all the settings and administration of other platforms they were using. So the biggest thing I learned is that when you give teachers a platform, it doesn't have content, they have to put their content into it. Teachers and students are the most creative people in the world, 100%. That has been, even here at TEDx, teachers are coming up to us and telling us about how they use this thing we built, and we're blown away. I mean, that is absolutely incredible. And it's because of their culture, and it's their culture of exploration, of learning, of knowledge. And one of my favorite designers is John Maeda. He's a VC out in Silicon Valley. He was a designer for years. He said at leading tech companies, design is much more than just figuring out how a new product will look. And I completely agree. And the article he attached is that the true role of design is changing the digital era and driving new ways of funding, even in a lot of companies today. So we had the privilege of really thinking outside the box and thinking, where could Flipgrid go? We've had a lot of success. Our culture of design was constantly growing, and our ideas for where we could go were kind of popping out of the windows of our small little office at the U. So in February of this year, we, in 17 days, raised $17 million to take what worked really well with Flipgrid and bring it to the world. And the media kept coming in, and we had no clue what was happening. We're literally sitting in our little office at the U, and for me to have this screen up is actually pretty amazing because you see Emerging Prairie, you see Arthur Ventures. Fargo is threaded throughout the DNA of our new company, and we are incredibly proud of that. So what it allowed us to do is go from a crazy group of 8 people in a crammed-in little, probably 400 square foot university room to about 33 people in that same square room, until finally, a couple weeks ago, we were able to move into a much bigger space and again continue on the culture that everyone's a designer. Everyone's opinion is respected, from QA to architecture to engineering to HR to finance to even the CEO is coming up with ideas every single day, and every single one of those ideas are respected in the smallest little UI things. And it's been fantastic. Jim Leslie is my co-founder who's sitting up in the front row, and also this guy right here, Phil Soren, was on this stage last year, and he said culture eats strategy for breakfast. I couldn't agree more. So our culture became design first. Everything we do is design first. So as we're building out this new platform and this new company, we're trying to take a whole new look on what's meaningful in life, looking at your friends, your videos, and your control. These are not your followers. These are people that you want to share the smallest little insignificant moments with, because to them and to you, they're not insignificant. And you also have full control over that experience. This will actually be out in about a month. We'd love you to take a look, and we're only getting started with this. What we've learned, though, is when you're designed for everyone, it's best to start with you and your team. You can't just start designing for everyone. You design for yourself. So lastly is kids. Kids give you a whole new outlook on life. This is my son, Parker. He's 1. My daughter, Kira, is 4. And for parents, for my wife, Jill, and I, it's an amazing blessing. But as a designer, you only get 1 or 2 of these a life where they take the lens off and they put a whole new lens on and they reshape what you think. And as a designer, it's a gift that you can't purchase. So lastly, in thinking about design and all these shifts, it's always hard for me to define design. And at this point in time, right now, on this little red dot right here, which is amazing, I think that design is everything before and everything after done. Thank you.